welcome to the very first Fill Your Boots, the Hard Line podcast. My name's Lucy and I'm joined by my two amazing guests, rugby journalists Katy Homewood and Alema, the Sunday Times Sportsman of the Year for 2020. Thank you so much for being on our first show. The theme for today is getting into the game, and Z, you have been on Fill Your Boots before. You've discussed when you started rugby and given us the wonderful journey you've been on. Having played for as long as you have, we've seen such a boom since in women taking up the sport in the last year or so. Why do you feel there's been such a big uptake in players in the sport in recent months?
I think a lot of it is to do with the exposure, especially in the women's game. Even most recently, it was on BBC, aired on BBC, which is amazing. But I think the lead up to that, even going back to the World Cup, 2014 World Cup with England winning, I think that was a massive boost for women's rugby, and a lot of people got engaged and got involved as a sort of aftermath of that amazing win. So I think since then, women's rugby has been at the forefront of people's minds, I guess, and it's sort of given that exposure that was needed for the women's game. We're seeing a lot of streaming, especially in the 2015 Premiership, which is amazing. Mm-hmm. People can access the games live and watch it through YouTube, England Rugby, etc. So I think the exposure of it on social media has helped a lot to grow the sport, which is amazing.
Absolutely, and you've got quite a few seasons under your belt now and been through quite a few clubs. What is the main differences you've seen between starting and now in the sport for you?
I think when I started out, from my own personal experiences, it was a bit. I started out under 18s at Ealing Childfinders, and I think then as a 17-year-old, I was sort of still trying to find my feet within the rugby community. But I think now, the rugby community is such a place where it's kind of a small world. A lot of people know each other. You can move from club to club, and an ex-player from your previous club might be there, or you might see somebody that you met, at a social, for example. So I think for me, as I've gotten older in my rugby journey, it's just feeling that sense of rugby community. Well, I think that's when I started as a 17-year-old, I sort of wasn't really aware, even though I think I don't know if it was an age thing for me. I just started out, I wasn't really sure where I fitted in. But now it's like, I can go to any club right now and just, blend in. So I think that's testament to the rugby community and how much there's a lot of togetherness and a bond.
Absolutely. And do you think that there's been an improvement with how women are brought into the sport in terms of how coaches are being more equipped in how to lead women's teams, and especially these days where many teams are still predominantly male? Do you think there's been a change in focus with coaches and being more open to having women's teams?
I think we still have a long way to go, if I'm being honest. I spoke to a couple of girls from Hackney, not the Hackney rugby team, just a lot of local young girls from Hackney, and they said they had issues with getting along with coaches from certain clubs, and I don't know if it's sort of in their words, they said it was hard for them to relate to the coaches that were teaching them about rugby and coaching them about the sport. So it could potentially be like a class issue, because a lot of these girls were like young black girls from, I guess, deprived neighbourhoods, and they were finding it hard to sort of engage with the coaches at a particular rugby club. In terms of the wider sense, generally, I feel like we are getting a bit better. We are talking about certain things within the women's game. I know there's a lot of research stuff like Telegraph Women's Sports. They're being really good at really putting rugby to the forefront of their stories. I know recently we talked about periods, like women having periods during sports, and how we can sort of have discussions around period cycles and playing sport. What can we do to create understanding, and also for the male coaches as well? Because you could have you have a woman on your team and she's going through a menstrual cycle, how to handle certain things like that. So I think it just all feeds back into we're talking about it more. We're talking about the issues about women's rugby more, which will hopefully help us resolve some of those issues.
Absolutely. And Katie, standing on the sidelines, it's a slightly different perspective for you. How have you seen the change in the landscape change in recent years?
I think probably the main thing is people's attitude around women's rugby is starting to change, and people are actually taking it a lot more seriously, which I think is what everybody wants. You know, the women's game is serious and it should be taken seriously. And I think that with sort of, you know, TV rights and more girls playing the game, actually it's showing everybody that women's rugby is on the rise and we should all embrace it and view it in the same way as we do the men's game. Okay, the professional level might not be there just yet, but there's no reason why we shouldn't view the men's and the women's game differently because of gender. You know, and that, I think that's the big sort of movement where actually women's rugby is on the map now. It's here to stay, and it's only going to grow.
Absolutely, and I think that we have such a brilliant platform at the moment to keep the train moving and pushing forward. And do you think that there will be behavioural changes that still we have to overcome in the coming years as well?
I hope so. I mean, I hope that we won't have to keep doing the I Care campaigns, and you know, one day actually it doesn't matter. But then you could say that for every aspect in sport. You could say that for racism in sport and anything really. So I think that hopefully one day there'll be a much greater proportion of people that watch the women's game and you know, get their children involved or get their friends involved. And I think it will progress over time, but I think time is not of the essence, but it will take time for people to actually fully accept the women's game. And I hope that we can use social media in a positive way to, you know, get more people involved, get young girls playing, all these, you know, fantastic ways that we can use social media and not focus on the people that use it incorrectly.
Absolutely. And speaking of the fantastic ways that young ladies can get involved in the game, Z, you have recently spoken quite passionately about your foundation, Studs in the Mud, and how that's supporting the community. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so Studs in the Mud, it was a project that I founded. I was actually on maternity leave, and I usually have these like crazy ideas. I don't know if it's the hormones or I don't know, being inside the baby, but it's about using rugby and its values to sort of make positive change within the community. So this was founded in Ghana. So my parents are Ghanaian, so it was a project that I wanted to found in Ghana and launch in Ghana, and so it's mainly aimed at women and girls. I think because these age groups are often not really forgotten, but they're sort of the feature. You know, you have the young boys and girls having aspirations. If you can give them the rugby values, you know, the respect, the discipline, all those amazing things that rugby can give you at a young age, it can ultimately, you know, character build. It's a character building, and then go on to do other things that can transfer those skills into other aspects of their lives. And then for the women as well, I feel like it's really important for me to do something for the women out there using rugby as a tool, because back home, especially, you know, in countries such as Ghana, sports is not a priority. You know, it's often things like education, maybe getting married, having kids, but sport is not something that people really care about as much in their communities. So I wanted rugby to be that vehicle for change. And when I went out there, I had rugby boots, balls, all the equipment you need to play basic rugby, and giving them to a young child who used to was playing rugby barefoot, to give them a fresh pair of boots. You could see their face just light up, and they were so happy and so grateful. And I just thought, this is what I want to do. Like, I want to use using my passion to help other people and to help the community. So that's what it is about.
Super. And how can clubs in the UK get involved if they wish to?
Yeah, so I've got a Facebook page, also Instagram page. They can follow us on Instagram and Facebook. We have a link because this year I'm hoping to actually do a tournament out there in Ghana. It's
amazing.
So last time I went, it was kids focused, but I want to do something for the women out there. So I wanted to do a sevens tournament for the local women out there. So I'm currently raising funds. So on Facebook and on Instagram, we have Studs in the Mud page. So people can go, there's a link, all the information is on there. And it's just at Studs in the Mud on Instagram. You can find us there.
Absolutely, everyone go and donate now. So speaking of, there's a lot of these issues that are coming to the forefront, especially with women's rugby. It's not just women, it's young girls getting involved, and a big part of that is changing behaviour. Something that's on the radar at the moment, Katy, and you're familiar with this given your recent dissertation, is mental health in the sport. And talk to us a little bit more about the importance of it in rugby.
I think everybody knows the core values of rugby, that, teamwork, community, and feeling like you're involved in something that's probably far greater than sport. And the sort of physical benefit everybody knows of sport, but mentally, even just going outside for a walk is fantastic. So if you translate that then into a game that incorporates this one team environment, it's only sort of going to improve. And we've heard a lot of male players come out and say that they're really suffering with their mental health. And I think by them doing that, it's also helped the game as a whole, not just the men's and the women's game, because it's showing people that, yes, okay, rugby is perceived as a tough sport, but the people necessarily, you don't have to be, tough, whatever that word is, that everybody somewhere across their life will probably go through some sort of mental health difficulty. And that's just the world that we live in at the moment. And I think rugby and the core values and the friendships that you build in rugby can really help with all facets of your mental well-being, whether it's good or bad. And I think sort of the bonds that you build within the rugby community, regardless of whether, they're at your club, you could find somebody in the middle of nowhere, and if they had a rugby shirt on, you could go up to them and go, by the way, I have no idea where I am. Do you know where the local train station is? And because you're part of that rugby community, I think it's massive on your mental health, because you feel like this global family is there for you because of the core values that the game sort of holds.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And do you think that the future of rugby clubs is having representatives within the club that support mental health? Is that the future of the direction?
I think it needs to be, because mental well-being is so important. You break your knee, you go to a doctor. You suffer with depression, you hide it. And I think that in some cases, and I think that is something that needs to be looked on. And, people are playing rugby, regardless of whatever level. If you're at the highest level, you're going to be under such demand and stress from your job. And it's a pressure environment. We've seen it with the Six Nations, we'll see it with the World Cups. There is so much pressure over performance and everybody's looking at you. So therefore clubs especially professional clubs, have to look at how can we support our players and different things that will affect their mental health. The men's game, there's lots of things. The women's game, it could be based on the fact that people still view the women's game like it's nothing. So that's also another thing that actually clubs as a whole need to take responsibility of looking after player welfare.
Absolutely. And player welfare, Z, you mentioned it in your previous podcast that you did with Fill Your Boots last year. Culture and the rugby culture in itself, particularly for women, I suspect, in your opinion, has to evolve as well. You face significant challenges with the cultural side of rugby when you first began.
Yeah, I mean, going back to sort of my own personal experiences, I think a lot of it was the drink-based aspect. So going after winning the match, and you go, to the bar and down a pint, and I couldn't drink, so I couldn't down a pint. But that's just, I guess it's one aspect to look at. I think there's always alternatives in these situations. If I don't drink, I can have an orange juice, I can have a lemonade. So I think sometimes it's just asking questions like why. And I always say, do not assume, like don't make assumptions about people's cultures. I think it's always safe to ask instead of just saying what you feel and getting it wrong. So I think it's about being comfortable with asking uncomfortable questions sometimes. And I think if you know it's coming from a genuine place, people do want to learn. And asking a question will always be better than just assuming or jumping the gun. So yeah, I think talking more, asking more questions about people's cultures will definitely help.
Absolutely, and it's quite, that rugby culture can be quite intimidating to a lady who's choosing which club she joins or which sport she participates in. And And is that the sort of piece that also needs to change as well to stop rugby being intimidating potential new players?
I think one thing, for example, just moving a little bit away from sort of the drinking aspect, but sometimes when you get a new person come into a club, everybody's been there. We've been there for some time. You know what we're doing. You get a new person coming, and not every club, but some clubs sort of they join in and just get stuck in. And I think it's worthwhile giving them a bit of, I guess, like a little trial run within the training session. So people that are new to the game come off. I know some clubs do it anyway. Come off, let's show you how to tackle, let's show you how to do passing, and then you can join afterwards. Because I think sometimes, no matter how old you are, I think even as grown women or grown adults, you go into a new club, you don't know anybody, you don't know anything about rugby, and you're just sort of thrown into the deep end, you're not really sure. I think it's always good to have that reassurance that somebody can take you on the side, show you how to do the basics, and then you can join the group later. But generally, I mean, we're all like pretty friendly. Like rugby can be really friendly, so we're always welcoming new players. But I think maybe it's just that sort of talking through the basics sometimes really does help, and I know a lot of clubs already do that.
Absolutely. Steph makes a very good comment here in the comment section that coaches have the responsibility and knowledges of differences. And I think that's a very poignant point, that actually this cultural shift from whether it's culturally, gender-based, whatever that might be, has to come from the top. And I think coaches can be a real catalyst in making that change and pushing things forward. I've got a question from Rachel as well. This is directed to you, Katy. She says, how can journalism help increase diversity of women's rugby?
Talk about it more, televise the games more, be more vocal about sort of everything, because I think that there is a perception that women's rugby is one thing and actually it's completely different, and it's not that. Women's rugby is made up with so many amazing women, all shapes and sizes, and it's the game. And I think that recognition needs to be really, really important. Not saying that it's just a women's game, but actually showing the diverse ranges of women that play rugby and how that can really help the game grow. We've seen, television needs to jump on women's rugby, because you can't be what you can't see. And I think it's the same in anything. Young girls watching rugby, oh, I look like this, that player, is the same dress size as me. Perfect. That means I can do this. And I think the more you show, young girls or even older women that actually, your next door neighbor might play, and that is the recognition that it needs. So journalism really needs to grow the game by giving the exposure, and as much as a men's game. Why can't we have 3 or 4 articles a week on a women's game? The game's being played. So it's that really bringing the attention straight to the media and, exposing the women's game.
Absolutely.
I think that's a really good point that Katy just made. And off the back of that, I think in terms of hearing the stories more, I know that in terms of the Premiership, they're sort of they've given us insight to the players. So behind them as a player, what is the backstory, the jobs that they do, incredible women doing things as well as, juggling, playing rugby. So I think that aspect is really captivating and really engaging to know who the person is, what they do sort of in a day-to-day, as well as juggling rugby. And it could be something so little, but you can relate to that person just because maybe they do the same job as you, or like Katy was saying, they wear the same dress size. Those little things that really make a massive impact within the community, just to know you can look at somebody and be like, I can relate to you, I'm going to try it out because I can see something in you that I can relate to. So yeah.
Absolutely, and I myself am a sort of beginner rugby player, and one of the reasons why I played was looking at the Red Roses and realising that half of them were as tall and wore the same dress size as me, and I went, well, if they can do it, I can. So, and quite rightly, I think role models are so relatable for women and girls, and the mindset and how we think and the choices that we make from what we think is super important to understand. I've got another question from Matthew, who says, how can local regional rugby unions help promote and encourage women's rugby at the grassroots level? And what barriers are in place that need to be removed to encourage young girls to take it up and stay with the sport through to adulthood? Z, I don't know if you want to take that one first.
Gosh, it's a big question. What can they do to encourage? It's not going to be easy. It's definitely a tough one. I think schools are a really good place to start. That's where I started playing rugby. My PE teachers, they were into rugby, and they were like my the people that actually said that, right, we're playing rugby today. And so I think schools are definitely a good place to start, but not stopping at school. So community hubs, where are these people going after school? So if they're going to youth centres, are they having faith lessons, faith schools? Are they going to in a local estate, do they have like a sports centre? All these places away from the school. I feel like it's really important for rugby to really get in there and show these people that there's a pathway to play rugby. And I think barriers, it's tough because at school, I think I was amongst a lot of the young girls that really enjoyed sports. I had friends that would write fake PE notes to get out of PE because they didn't want to play. And I did. Okay. And you know what? It's interesting because, like, I had a chat with one of my friends recently, and they were talking about PE back in school, and she brought on an incident where she was always the last to get picked for a team, and it was between her and someone else. They were always the last two people to get picked, and one day somebody picked her, and she's like, "Oh, okay, she's not the last anymore." And they're like, "Sorry, no, I meant the other person." So for her, that incident totally spoiled like her relationship with sport. And up to today, she's not sporty at all. She doesn't even go for runs or anything. So I think going back to why people are reluctant to or hesitant to play sports, going in deeper, what is the reason? I think body image is a big thing, both for young girls. They didn't want to get hot and sweaty. I think especially the drop-off sort of 14 years old, going where they drop off sports. I think it's really important for us to go in there and ask the questions, why is it happening? So yeah, I think there's a lot of things found there. I don't really have the answers, but I think definitely a lot of questions to ask there.
Katy, do you think clubs can do more? Coming back to Matthew's question, do you think clubs can do more to engage with their local communities to get youngsters into the sport and particularly girls?
I think they sort of need to. I think we see that the community game is big, and we recognise that it's somewhere that could really be improved. But I think also, maybe not, I know there's this whole debate over tackling and children tackling and is it safe and everything. Okay, if you don't feel comfortable tackling, give them a rugby ball, teach them how to play touch, get them involved in an aspect of the game. And I think that would be fantastic. How many people walk down your street tomorrow, do you see, in the park kicking around a football? But very few people throw around a rugby ball. And I think that's partly due to this whole, I don't want to get hurt. I don't want to fall over. I don't want to ruin my makeup or whatever it might be. So take that away. Just play rugby without being tackled, without a line out, without a scrum or whatever, and get that more in the community game so people can realise that rugby isn't this, big, bad, scary game. It can just be throwing a ball around with your mates. And the more you see that, people will go, oh, actually, I really like this. What if I took it one step further? And then that's also really where clubs can capitalise on the community, because they can go, great, you like it, come with us. We can really nurture you and turn you into a fantastic player.
Absolutely. I've got a couple of other questions. I've got one offline question, which is for you, Katy, which came in through my Instagram the other day, which was why rugby sports journalism out of all the niches you could have chosen?
I have been obsessed with the game since I was about 2. My dad and I would watch every single game. I would go to a fixture, I'd come back and I wouldn't even take my coat off, and my mum would go, what are you doing? I'm watching the game. So, but you've just seen it. Yeah, I'll watch it back. I just love the sport. I absolutely enjoy everything about it, the whole community aspect. I don't play. I wish I could, but I can't. So I go down at uni every Wednesday and I go cheer on everybody that does. We watch the women's game, then we watch the men's game, and I just love that community feel. And I thought, what do I want to go into as an industry? And I thought, why not go into one that actually makes me incredibly happy? And you girls will know everybody really in the sport is nice and charming. Okay, obviously everybody probably wouldn't be, but as a community, it's such a fantastic sport to join, and I just love the game. I'm pretty much obsessed with it, really. That's why rugby.
Fantastic. And Z, I've got another question from Rachel here, who says, what's your favourite small furry animal?
It's Nuggets. It's Nuggets, the little bunny rabbit. That's my teammate asking that question.
Yeah, I sense there's a story behind that, but I suspect we won't go into details. Fantastic. We've got a few minutes left of your time, and I know, as all of us in grassroots sports, and particularly rugby, there's a lot of unseen hard work that goes in behind the scenes, and a lot of work that goes into building a club and getting a team actually on the pitch. And I want to use this opportunity and a chance for you to shine a spotlight on your unsung grassroots rugby heroes. Tell us more about your unsung hero and why you've chosen them.
Katy, you can go first.
Your sort of typical grassroots choice. I've chosen Rachel Burford. Obviously, she's an England and Harlequins player, so actually probably not your first choice of a unsung grassroots hero. But the work that she does with young girls, I think, is absolutely incredible, and I think that's where it needs to start. She's got her girls rugby club, and that is an international pathway and platform to connect, I think it's like 2.7 million girls that are playing rugby. And I think that if you start there, it's only going to grow throughout the grassroots game, the professional game, and everywhere else. And I think she is really developing girls when they sort of need it. And it's that role model to look up to. And I think that is so important, having a fantastic role model, and what a perfect person to look up to. And although people know her on the professional level, the work that she does with growing young girls to take up the sport, I think, is just truly fantastic. And she's unsung in the way that maybe everybody knows that she does the work, but maybe not to the extent that she does it.
Absolutely. And Z, your unsung hero.
I'm gonna say Anne Anwar-Siri, who is the founder of Black Girls Rock, a podcast that I've got into most recently, and it's something that personal to me, because I didn't actually. It's something that I guess I wanted to start myself. So, and she obviously got there first, which I absolutely love, and she shines a spotlight on the experiences of Black people within rugby and how they, what they've gone through, and the experiences, and I just love it. And it's really funny, really witty, and I definitely think people should hop on and have a listen. Absolutely amazing podcast. So yeah, I would say definitely give it to her. Her platform was grown. When she first started out, she's got over 1,000 followers now, and also testament to her hard work and people that are following, and people that she has to speak on her podcast. So yeah, Anne Anwar-Siri, she's from Hackney girls.
Fantastic. And I've got one last question from David. He says, what role does social media play in influencing young girls? And Katy, I guess we'll hand this one to you.
Huge, absolutely huge. I actually feel blessed that I didn't grow up as a young girl in the social media craziness that it is now, because I would hate to be a 13-year-old girl looking at her phone feeling like she has to look like this supermodel, that singer, wear this, wear that. And it is so important, because young girls are glued to their phone. And if you have a role model that is actually a proper role model, not this celebrity that lives in the middle of London in a huge lovely house and gets all her money off of posting a photo, an actual person who does hard work, can show you core values of anything, and then put that into the sport, it's fantastic. And actually, for social media to say to young girls, you should be proud to play sport, you should be proud of who you are, sort of regardless of what you think of yourself. And I think it's huge as well on the mental health scale of letting girls know that social media isn't the be all and end all, but it can be a fantastic platform to show them, that life isn't just about taking a selfie, and you can get out there with your friends and play sport or whatever it might be. And it's such a fantastic tool to be used in the right way. And we are at the moment probably on the verge of it being used in the wrong way. So as a society, everybody needs to change their way that they use social to make sure that young girls are viewing themselves and their friends and everything in a positive light.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me for our first ever The Hard Line podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. Where can people find you on social media?
So my Twitter is at Katy Homewood, and my Instagram is Katy Homewood Rugby. I think search one of the two, that will pop up. I'm always tweeting away.
Fantastic. And Z?
Yeah, I'm Alema Zainab on Twitter and Z Alema on Instagram. So you can find me on those two platforms.
Absolutely, everyone go like, share, follow Studs in the Mud as well, and get donated, guys. We are going to be back for the next Fill Your Boots, The Hard Line, on the 2nd of March at 7 o'clock. So please come and join us in 2 weeks, and we'll see you soon. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.